Today, we're diving into a really fascinating document. It's a massive 400-page report, an environmental and social impact assessment for a huge fisheries project in Bangladesh. Think of it as a blueprint for a billion-dollar bet on the future of one of the world's most dynamic landscapes. So, what does a report like this actually tell us about the future of such a vulnerable and vital region? Let's get into it. And this is where our story is set. We're looking at the Chakaria shrimp estate, a stunning web of rivers and channels just teeming with life. This is a place literally defined by water, where the line between the land and the sea is always shifting. You can almost feel the pulse of the tides just looking at this picture. So to really get a handle on what's at stake with this billion-dollar project, we first have to understand why this watery world is so incredibly important. I mean, just look at these numbers. They really show you the sheer scale of dependency on this single ecosystem. We're not just talking about an industry here. This is a cornerstone of the entire nation's food security. Fish provides more than half of the animal protein for a country of 170 million people. So you can see what happens here really does affect everyone. But this lifeline is fragile. You've got silt clogging up the rivers, salt water creeping further inland, and of course cyclones that just seem to get stronger every year. This delicate balance is under serious threat, which is exactly what sets the stage for this massive billion-dollar intervention, one that's designed to essentially re-engineer the entire ecosystem. So, how do you even begin to tackle challenges like these? Well, that brings us to the project itself, a really high-stakes plan to try and engineer a more sustainable and more productive future for this whole region. It's called the Sustainable Coastal and Marine Fisheries Project, or SCMFP for short. And at its heart, it's a massive government effort to completely overhaul the coastal aquaculture system to make it both more resilient and, well, more profitable. So what does that actually look like on the ground? Well, we're talking major infrastructure. They're dredging kilometers of canals to get the water flowing again and building new sluice gates. And if you're not familiar, those are basically giant doors that control the flow of water, which is absolutely crucial for managing things like salinity and preventing floods. It is a top-to-bottom modernization effort. But you know how it goes. With big changes come big risks. And that brings us right to the heart of this entire 400-page report, this really delicate dance between progress and peril. This slide, right here, really lays out the trade-offs. On one side, you have the promise of more jobs, better food security, higher living standards. But on the other, the report is very clear about the serious risks. You could be destroying habitats, sparking social conflict over land, and even making flood risks worse if things aren't managed perfectly. Now, this number tells a really powerful story about what's at stake financially. Over 91%. That's how much of the aquaculture production in the main project area comes from just one thing: shrimp. This entire ecosystem and the livelihoods of thousands of people is all riding on this single commodity. And while they're betting big on shrimp, Mother Nature is raising the stakes. 212 kilometers per hour. That was the wind speed of Cyclone Mocha when it slammed into this exact region just last year. This isn't some far-off future threat. This is the reality these new investments have to withstand right now. And beyond the environmental risks, the report digs into the incredibly complex social landscape. I mean, just imagine living in a community where the land your family has farmed for generations is suddenly leased out to outsiders. The report says this creates deep resentment, a sense of powerlessness, and that leads to big problems like encroachment, theft, and security issues. And then bringing in a large workforce from outside could strain these communities even more. Okay, so how on earth do you manage all of this? How do you push for progress without inviting peril? Well, the report's answer is a very detailed plan for a very difficult balancing act. It's all laid out in something called an Environmental and Social Management Plan, or ESMP. You can think of this as the project's rulebook, or even its conscience. So, for example, if a new canal is being built, the ESMP has a specific plan for how to do it in a way that minimizes damage to the nearby mangrove forests. It's a detailed strategy to try and stop the bad stuff before it happens. So how does the plan actually work? It follows a really clear logic called the mitigation hierarchy. Let's say you're the project manager. Your first instinct might be to just build a canal on the most direct route. But this hierarchy forces you to think differently. First, you have to ask, Can we avoid this sensitive area altogether? If that's not possible, then how can we minimize the damage? If there are still impacts, how do we mitigate them, maybe by replanting trees? And only as a last resort, how do we compensate the community for what's been lost? It's a very systematic way of thinking about risk. Of course, a plan is one thing. Actually making it happen is something else entirely. And this chart here reveals just how incredibly complex it is to turn this plan into a reality. Just look at all the different groups involved, from the World Bank all the way down to local grievance committees. Just coordinating all these moving parts is a massive, massive challenge. So, after wading through 400 pages of analysis, what's the bottom line? What's the final takeaway from this whole massive undertaking? You know, a quote from the report itself really sums it up perfectly. The goal here isn't just development, and it isn't just conservation. The real goal, what's truly at stake, is achieving both at the same time, ecological balance and socioeconomic prosperity. And that, right there, is the tightrope this project has to walk. So, in the end, this report is so much more than just an assessment of risk. It's a roadmap. It's really a calculated bet that we can, in fact, engineer a better, more sustainable future, even in the face of incredible challenges. And that leaves us with the final and most critical question. The blueprint is here. It's comprehensive, it's ambitious, but what do you think? Can a plan, no matter how detailed it is, ever truly guarantee a sustainable future on the ground? Can it account for all the unpredictable forces of nature, of economics, and of human behavior? The answer to that question is what will decide the fate of millions of people and the future of this fragile, beautiful delta.